and want to welcome everybody to our June 2nd virtual Board of the GRRA First Tuesday Luncheon. And we need to start it off with our cares and concerns and our pledge. Well, not the pledge, but cares and concerns with Stephanie Mabe.
Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie with Allen Tate. So our cares and concerns this month are our GRA member Tanya Graham, whose grandparents Willie Moore and Shirley Davis Moore both recently passed away. GRA member Jason Scott's mother, Wanda Joy Nichols Atkins, who passed away on May 15th. GRA member Mital Canaria's father, who passed away on Thursday, May 21st, and GRA member James Davis, who lost his mother, Iris Davis, on May 25th. And our former GRA member Virgil Spalding, who also passed away on Wednesday, May 20th. Please keep these members and their families in your thoughts and prayers, and a contribution was made to GRF in memory of each family member. And I'll finish this up with prayer if you want to bow your heads. Thank you so much, Father God, for this opportunity to be together, even in these uncertain times. And even though it's virtual, we just pray for continued strength and guidance for our country and for the world right now. And we just, we pray for good health and safety, and to help guide us back to somewhat of a normal life in the following months. And we just pray for all of our members in our association and Guilford County in general. Amen.
Thank you, Stephanie. As we get started today, my heart goes out to these members and their families, knowing that this is a tough time for us being realtors and in the passing of our friends and families. So moving forward, very thankful to have two guests speak for us today, which I consider them great advocates, not only for us, but for our communities. Start off with the introduction for Pat Tillman, who is currently serving on the Guilford County Board of Education, representing District 3. He serves on numerous local boards, which includes the Servant Center, Friends Homes, and of course, one of his favorites, the Greensboro's F3 group, Fitness, Fellowship, and Faith. He's a former Marine of the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force, which, hoorah, I'll give him one of those. He graduated from Appalachian University. So very thankful for him to be here. Also, Jeff Phillips, who's representing District 5, and he is the chairman of the Guilford County Board of Education, or he's the chairman of the Guilford County Commissioners. Mr. Phillips is managing partner with Midtown Financial Advisors. He received his BS from the University of Central Oklahoma, which I know he's a proud person of Oklahoma and very, but more important than that, which is not in here, he is more proud of being a grandfather, and he posts it and talks about it all the time, his grandchildren. So he's a very proud, young-looking grandfather. So for that, we are thankful for him and making real estate essential and to help our citizens of Guilford County to buy and selling during this difficult and panicked, time. So let's get started. So Jeff, go ahead and tell us about what's been going on in the county commissioners and schools and the budget, of course.
Well, thank you, Ray. Really, really appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you this morning, and thank you for the invitation. And a lot to talk about, more than I can speak to in 10 or 12 minutes or so, I think is my allotted time. So I'll try to stick to that. And Ray, if I start to push it on the time, just give me a signal of some kind, if you will.
I'll let you go to 15.
We'll button it up. I'll try to keep it brief, but there's obviously a lot going on, but I want to thank all real estate agents, brokers, and their respective teams, especially as we work through some of the most obviously difficult times that we've seen in many years, and for some of us in our lifetimes. I want to thank you all for the work you do to make homeownership and residential commercial investment a real, not only possibility, but a reality for so many of our citizens. Buying or selling one's home, I think we know as someone, I do at least, that doesn't do the work you do every day, is obviously one of the most important and stressful, frankly, for some decisions in life. And I just greatly appreciate and respect the very challenging and no doubt very rewarding work that each of you does day in and day out for your clients and our citizens. The work you do is really, and you alluded to this, Ray, but one of the most critical aspects I believe and always have, and I want that to be clear, at least as one thing you leave with today that I've said. I believe that it's one of the most critical aspects of our local and regional economy. That is the work you do, and you'll have to trust me, regardless of some of the decisions that we felt we needed to make over the last few months, particularly during those early days, that I've always been on your side. As we navigated those unprecedented, uncharted waters, trying to really understand better the science behind what was happening, why it was happening, and the risks, some very difficult decisions were made, and I recognize how some of those decisions were very impactful for you individually and your businesses as well. And I just want you to know that I've always been on your side, and that's not going to change. That has been the case and will not change forevermore. Frankly, not everybody, as you may remember, agreed with our decision, in fact, to allow the local stay-at-home order to expire. But getting you back to work, and proper safety protocols in place, obviously, was always one of our strongest points of consideration throughout that process, again, in those early days. And I heard from many of you during that time, but I want to personally and publicly amongst your peers, Ray, thank you, your association president, Ray Alexander, also Tony Jarrett, who I worked closely with during that time as well, and for staying in touch with me, for communicating in a very rational and reasonable way throughout that process, and working closely with me and others during that time of particularly sort of elevated time of uncertainty. So even as recently as last week, I've heard from both of these gentlemen just as follow-ups. So I really do appreciate the two of you in particular, and the connectiveness that you have had with me along the way. We come back to a final thought. I had some notes that were given to me. Might be a question in mind about what are the possibilities of another stay-at-home order that could affect you again in the future. Boy, that's a last resort, I'll be honest. If somebody wants to ask that question of me later, I might could get a little more specific, but I think that's a wait and see proposition. We certainly would rather not have to go there. So just to give you a quick update, not that some may not be as interested, but here in Guilford County, since the outset of the pandemic, there have been about 1,300 positives. That is, folks who are positive tested and determined to be positive with the virus. 222 as of yesterday, 222 hospitalizations. Unfortunately, 65 people have passed away, deemed as primarily from the impacts of the virus on their health. The good news is there are about 700 recoveries out of those 1,300 that have tested positive. About 535 as of yesterday still considered active cases. There's a lot of conjecture around, what is and is not active, but the bottom line there in terms of our public health department's perspective is if you're still exhibiting symptoms, even though 14 days may have passed, you are still active. And so we continue to monitor their progress and don't deem them recovered until they really are beyond symptoms. So about 70 are currently hospitalized across the county. And again, I think when you hear those numbers relative to a county of our size of over 500,000, you might be quick to think, well, those are not all that significant relative to the total population. But trust me, a lot of the work that you've done to instill those safety protocols, both personally and professionally, over the last 2.5 months or so have made a lot of difference. Experts are telling us. So we need to continue to stay that course as best we can. That's, I think an obvious message that you'll continue to hear from all of us. Not to live in fear, but to, just to be as responsible as you can, certainly not to minimize the risk. But thankfully, again, I think we've averted a lot of the worst case scenarios that we were hearing were possible early on in the process. So again, thank you all for your help in that regard. I want to touch on 2 or 3 things kind of quickly, and then I want to wrap up with a very exciting opportunity I think that many, if not all of you, could consider getting involved with. But the question, and I'll touch on this, I know Pat and I are good friends, have known each other for a long time, and he'll speak to you more specifically about his take on the school bonds. I'll touch on those again briefly, but first I want to mention the budget. We're right in the middle of budget season right now. We're likely to adopt our budget, which will be over $600 million, roughly, probably on the 18th of June if all goes well. A lot of challenges that are directly related to the pandemic and COVID-19 that we never could have anticipated, even in late February, frankly. So that quickly, as you all know, economy nationally and here locally just really was essentially stifled, and particularly on the sales tax front. So you can imagine if you can't or don't want to or choose not to go out to eat as much, or certainly, or you're not out shopping as often, visiting and frequenting entertainment venues and the like, where every dollar you spend there, the sales tax associated with, part of which comes back to the county for revenue to help pay for our schools and all kinds of other public service critical needs that we work to provide for you, our citizens, every day. This fiscal year, we're estimating just through the end of June, was our bottom line budget for this fiscal year is impacted by what we expect to be around $16 million. That may not sound like a lot, but I can tell you within a $600 million budget, but I can tell you as tightly as we run the ship on your behalf, as careful as we are to count and watch every dollar, that is hugely significant impact. We're also projecting, and this was discussed in a budget meeting yesterday, that for next fiscal year, the trickle effect will likely to be in the $25 million range for next year's fiscal budget. So that is a negative impact to what we anticipated as recently as February. I mean, a few short months ago, that we would be receiving in revenue to help us to do some of the things, some of these critical needs that we want to address. That's just one example. I won't get into the unemployment scenario many of you are hearing about. Some of you may be close to people personally experiencing unemployment, but here's a quick fact. I noted this in our last regular meeting. 20% of eligible workers across the state of North Carolina are currently unemployed. That is, they filed for unemployment. That actually is not a true indicator of actual unemployment, but actually filed for unemployment in the state of North Carolina. And that's massive. I mean, we had low single-digit unemployment rates before the pandemic. When you've got that kind of unemployment rate across the state, I don't know exactly how that translates to Guilford County, but suffice it to say that tens of thousands of people right here in our county are not employed, seeking unemployment support. That all, and I don't have to tell you all, you're working with people in their financials every day. So you're probably seeing some of what people intended to do in February, they're not able to do now. But that's massive, and the impact on us here at the county is, what we can and can't do is significant as a result. We couldn't ignore that fact. And so as a result, and really it's about affordability and ability to pay. Another way to say it with regard to the decision we made on the bonds, it was really a situation where we had to navigate that decision carefully, such that we did not overextend ourselves over the next couple of years. And I say ourselves, I mean you. You're the citizens whose property tax and sales tax is what decides how much revenue we receive at the county and what we can then subsequently appropriate for critical needs. So we elected to really focus, at least, and frankly, you will decide in November whether the $300,000 is acceptable or not. If it is agreeable to our citizens, then we'll be issuing those bonds over the next 3 years or so. And those funds will be available, which is not an insignificant amount of money, $300 million, not enough, but not insignificant on the other hand, to address the critical needs of our school facilities in particular. So it really was about the change in dynamics, financial dynamics over the last really 3 months or so that put us in a position where we felt like the majority of our board, I should say, that was the most prudent decision for now. As a reminder, in 2022, the Board of Commissioners could, should they choose to do so, and if it were deemed affordable, that is the economy is coming back strong, then they could put another bond on the ballot in 2022, and every 2 years thereafter, should they choose to do so. So this is not a one and done proposition. I think that's a clear message that you'll want to share with your clients and your associates as well, so that this is not a negative, this is a positive, really. And in the long run, we hope the economy recovers well, and we're able to do more and over time. The quarter-cent sales tax referendum, that's going to be on the ballot in November as well. I'll just briefly touch on the importance. If we can, citizens will agree, which by the way, they've not on that question the last 4 times it's been on the ballot. Because those dollars can't be designated currently specifically for schools. That is, future boards could spend those monies on lots of different things should they choose to do so. Our current board has the attitude that citizens agree that the funds are going to go to schools and facilities specifically. But anyway, that's about a $19 million annual revenue proposition if we can get a quarter-cent sales tax approved, where everybody participates, including visitors that come through the county and spend dollars and sales tax revenue generated by virtue of all participating in the purchasing of goods and services across the county. So that's $19 million of revenue that could go annually, that is, go a long way toward helping our school facilities as well. Now there's a bill in the House and the Senate and the General Assembly that is currently working through committee. I won't belabor this, and I need to wrap up here, Ray, I know. But that could allow us to designate with that quarter-cent sales tax, actual add language on the ballot to make those funds, should the voters agree, be targeted to school facilities. So the future boards would be obligated to use those revenue dollars specifically on school facilities. Again, that could be a big win if we can get the General Assembly to help us with that and get that done, which we're optimistic about. Then that could be a plus for us. Anything you can do and your association can do to help move the needle in that regard, that'd be great. The last thing I'll mention is the small business grant program. You may have heard about the COVID-19 federal relief funds that the county received several weeks ago. It was about $94 million. We've been working hard to figure out how to appropriate those dollars. You can't just do anything you want with those. They have to be dollars spent on issues and services and needs directly related to the impact of COVID-19 across our county. So that's not a sort of open-ended, anybody wants or needs some funds, we decide sort of randomly about. Those are very specific purposed dollars, one of which is allowed by the federal government for us to set aside some of those monies to help the small businesses that have been negatively impacted, their mortgages, their utilities, their rents, if they rent, and other ancillary expenses that have been ongoing for any business person, as you all well know, and regardless of whether or not your revenues have been impacted. So you still got to pay the bills, even though obviously you couldn't go out and sell, frankly, or help a client buy a home for a period, which impacted your personal and team's income, for example, depending on how you're structured. But right now, as of this moment, you can go to Guilford County's website, and on the front page, you'll see a big bold indicator where you can learn more, and that as of 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, you can make application for up to $10,000 grant. And that's similar in some ways to the payroll protection program in terms of the measures for eligibility, but it's a grant, not a loan. So I won't get into any details on that. If any of you applied for PPP at the federal level, you know what that looks like. That's a loan that could be forgivable if you meet certain requirements. Here at Guilford County, if you're eligible for up to $10,000, that'd be a grant. So that's not something you'd have to pay back. So that's $20 million. I don't know if I mentioned that. $20 million is available to our local business owners right here in Guilford County, up to $10,000 each entity that is eligible. So you got to be under 25 employees or FTEs, and there's some tax records you got to do to prove that you're a going concern and so on. But everybody on this discussion this morning could be eligible for some funds there if you'd like to pursue it. So Ray, I'll turn it back to you, sir. And anything else I need to touch on, please let me know.
No, that's awesome about that grant for small businesses. I know I've heard Harderster and some others talking about trying to get those funds where you can earmark them for just the schools. So that would be exciting. Although now with COVID and everything, we know that it's going to be a tough mountain to climb to get that in November. But thank you so much. And we'll hear from our next speaker, Pat. If you can talk to us, tell us more about the schools and the budget coming forward, and maybe even since I was just on this and it's top of mind, the calendar, which the state just did for you.
Yeah, sure. I'll keep it brief and just echo what my friend, Mr. Chairman, had eloquently said about you, Ray, and your group and the wider community of our real estate professionals. As we look at particularly the way I view a lot of what we do for our students and their families is to create well-prepared students for the world economy that we live in. No longer are students competing with, the kid that's a few seats down, or even competing with kids in California or Tennessee, but they're competing with students in Japan and China and all over the world. So as we look at economic drivers, we certainly want to lift you all up and thank you for your efforts. And probably an understatement is one of the most challenging times we've faced. So I'm just going to run down a sort of where I'm going to go here in the next 10 minutes, just so you can sort of be thinking about the three topics I was going to hit on. One is a very bright spot in a otherwise gray and somewhat maybe negative environment that we're in, and that's our CTE program that we launched this school year. I'll talk a little bit about that, I'll touch on the bond just for a few minutes. Jeff, I think, hit that very squarely. And then maybe I'll wrap up with sort of the COVID-19, some of the challenges and opportunities that we've learned about since going back to pre-corona, and now what we know today in terms of how it relates to schools and their families. So 2.5 years ago, we set up what we'll call a Blue Ribbon Task Force in order to better inform how we would launch our career technical education. I'll call that CTE to make it short as we move through this portion. We were very diligent about finding the economic clusters and looking at the data. A lot of it we know probably on this panel, and certainly the other real estate professionals are more in tune with where our economic drivers are in this county and region, but a lot of folks may not be as well versed in that. So we brought in business executives, leaders, small business owners, a few teachers. I think even Chairman Phillips might have been on a couple of those early meetings to really begin to drill down and come up with an effective plan that we could implement that wouldn't break the bank, so to speak, but that we could get moving quickly. Some people may have thought it moved too fast, and I guess I would, on some level, you have to build a plane while you're flying it and just move ahead. So we did that, and we have 6 academies now, all focused on those economic clusters, which are advanced manufacturing, particularly cyber security, which is a huge burgeoning field here in this region of the country. Transportation, logistics, healthcare sciences, and a construction component and building architectural. So we had 817 applications that we only had 240 slots for. So the response in a pretty short window of time for parents and students to get signed up and apply was overwhelming. And so we were just delighted at the response. And eventually these 6 career academies that we have now, eventually we'll have 14, which will represent all of our high schools. So just wanted to touch on that. Our whole effort there was to grow our own. The good news is the jobs are here or were here pre-corona. The downside is these employers and business leaders were having to fill those positions from outside the state and outside the county, and that's unacceptable. So appreciate all the work with the commissioners supporting us in that effort and getting that done. And on the legislative side, right now, currently, there's a $3 million CTE only for Guilford. It's a pilot that we helped work with the House and Senate to get passed, House Bill 1113 and Senate Bill 793, which will give us that $3 million that we had in the budget, again, pre-corona, which will allow us to buy the equipment and some of the hands-on tools and equipment and machinery and software that these kids are going to need as they enter the workforce. Now I'm just going to kind of pivot to the bond. I know Jeff touched on that, and I think thought he did a great job. We, again, going back to how it started, we partnered with the county commissioners to do a joint study. We split the cost on that. We looked at the data. Then we had a follow-up study that really a very third-party objective view would give us the actual needs of all the schools, so that there were no pet projects or one group of people that maybe or advocate more would get. So it was just a very accurate, detailed list of all the schools based on a few criteria. So we had that data, and based on that, there's about a little over $2 billion in actual needs for all of the schools throughout the county. But we ended up, we voted as a board to submit the $1.6 billion. Again, that was pre-corona, and no one could have forecasted, what would have happened just a few months later. And so I think now it's really important for I'll speak for myself, as this school board member representing District 3, to move forward and look ahead and focus on what we have and what we can, and do the most good with the money that we've been given. I think it's very important that we be good stewards and we show the community, the voters, the county commissioners, that we spend wisely and use the money for those really emergent needs, to take care of those schools that are in that first tranche, if you will. And then as Commissioner Phillips said, we certainly will have other opportunities. Hopefully down the road, things will improve, our economy rebounds, and we can do more. And part of that effort to help show good faith to the community and the commissioners as well was for us to work very hard legislatively in Raleigh to get a 1/4-cent sales tax with specific language. I'm glad Jeff mentioned that, because historically, as we all know, those referendums have failed. And I think it's in large part because they were too general, and commissioners had discretion, and we wouldn't know if it would in fact go for schools. This language would keep any future elected officials on the board of commissioners to use that money for schools. So we're very excited about that. It's a bipartisan. It was filed by Senator Gladys Robinson, Garrett, and Senator Tillman in the Senate, and it's got great support for our Guilford delegation, which it has to be passed. It has to be unanimous, and we've been getting good signs that that's going to happen, but we'll see. So that will be, as Jeff said, money in perpetuity that will be based on sales tax, which, as we know, once we get the ACC tournament and the swim meets and all the things that we're accustomed to having back, then that's real money, and that's important. And lastly, I was really so impressed and blown away by our staff and the superintendent, the way they handled COVID-19. Just a few weeks before it really, the shutdown happened, they were working 12, 14-hour days and figuring out all the scenarios and wargaming all sorts of scenarios, how to feed children. I mean, just that alone, the food scarcity component that maybe we don't even think about in terms of educating and the things that we know about. So all those plans were implemented. There were principal and community conference calls to help us have great ideas. And it was a real marketplace of ideas. It was, you just didn't know what hill you were going to climb. And I think, flipping education from 180 years of traditional in the classroom setting upside down was a Herculean effort. And just want to applaud everybody involved and our teachers. I mean, they're just going above and beyond. I've got 3 kids all in public school at elementary, middle, and high school. And, have been living that virtual distance learning. And so I know there's a lot of challenges with it, but we were fortunate in Guilford County to have purchased those tools about 3 years ago so that we could even have, the online portals that most parents and students are familiar with. And as you said, Ray, to try to keep on your talking point there, the state does mandate our calendar. We don't have flexibility. They said we're going to start August 17th. We also just, in our last board meeting, approved a plan for a virtual school, virtual learning, so that we can have very likely a hybrid model, so that we would have in-classroom instruction as well as the online virtual learning. And as Jeff said, we just don't know. Every day it's so fluid. It's hard to predict with any certainty what that's going to look like in come August. But we do know that the state has mandated that we start August 17th, about a week or so early. And we don't have calendar flexibility. So I will say this, and I feel like there's really will be no more snow days. Any snow day ought to be a learning day. because now we know we've got the tools at home, and I'm all about playing in the snow. Don't get me wrong, but I think anyway, that's more of a tongue-in-cheek thing. But Ray, I'll stop there.
You don't want the kids to hear you say that.
I know I don't, but there ought to be learning still happening, and so in some way.
I know I'm on the state, some of the state boards, and the big issue realtors, for our realtors down at the coast, we try and keep that calendar set so they can enjoy some, profits down there and enjoy summer for our kids. So, but thank you guys so much. We're going to see about, I think we've got a question or two. So Rich, I know you're on here. You've got a question.
Yeah, I actually have a couple of questions. Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Rich Manzi. I'm the chairman of the Government Affairs Committee here at GRRA this year. And got a couple quick questions for Commissioner Phillips, and then there's one from the audience for Pat Tillman. Start with, back to earlier on, Commissioner Phillips, you mentioned, one, that obviously your support for us as realtors in our community and businesses. What factors were involved, and/or people, board members, whoever, that basically made us non-essential at the beginning of the stay-at-home, even ahead of the state, the governor's stay-at-home order, and then what changed a few weeks later to let that order expire? What happened there?
Yeah. Well, a lot of factors involved in the early stages of the discussion. I mean, from speaking to Cone Health representatives, to include Terry Aiken, CEO there, and epidemiologist on his team, and really, a long list of folks who, both community leaders and elected leaders involved in some of those conversations. But obviously the mayors of both of the largest cities in the county were, and their respective managers were in the mix, as well as County Manager Lawing, our deputy manager, and Commissioner Alan Perdue, Commissioner Skip Alston in particular on the front end of some of those discussions as well. I don't really I don't like the word essential, the distinction between essential, non-essential, never did. That's legal jargon. The media kind of captures those kind of elements, and sometimes folks who are impacted do as well. And I certainly understand that, because there's a lot of sort of pain and frustration and angst that goes with being sort of labeled, like we're somehow not as, important, so to speak, as another type of business. And I think that's, I think there was some perception in that regard that really was unfortunate. Not intended, but that's, sort of the legal, as I said earlier, the legal jargon, so to speak, descriptor. And, businesses that have high touch incident, where you're actually face to face with a lot of people in your business, you're walking through homes and, doing showings, you have to sit down and do, paperwork, transactions, et cetera. I know there's e-signature opportunities among others as well electronically, but that helped in the early stages, but it's still face-to-face how we do. I'm a financial advisor. Last thing I want to do is try to be doing transactions of significance over the phone all the time. That's part of the business, but when it comes down to making really challenging decisions, you want to be with your client, and I get that, and I've always been very sensitive to that. So again, working to tweak that original, what was a tighter restriction, a couple of times, I think did help, I know, and particularly one time for your business, we tried to make some advancement. It's a challenge. I can't get into all of the we don't have time to talk about all the inside baseball, so to speak. But there were as many people tugging on me and us, our team, not to allow more for folks in your business, as there were folks who were saying, please, ease up here, relative to what had been put in place. So it's a challenge. You'd be surprised how many people in your industry were contacting me saying, we should not be permitted to do business right now. Just, shut us down. It's cool. It's okay. Well, I respect those positions as well, but it's trying to listen to all of that too and be respectful to everyone, not just a few, and obviously with great sensitivity to the services you provide our citizens who need to move their homes or, one way or another, and for all kinds of massively important reasons. So again, I'm not sure if I exactly answered your question. Those are some of the players in the mix that continue to be, and even today, most of whom are involved in conversation along these lines. Back to my earlier point, the last thing we want to do is to establish another stay-at-home order or anything with those type of restrictions again. We learned a lot, I'll be honest, on that point as well. And I think that's a valuable learning curve where none of us, elected, official, community leader, the list goes on, had ever experienced what we did in those early weeks. And as you know, some places around the country remain, while there's loosening going on, some places remain very tight, particularly with folks in your business right up until recently. So we want to do everything we can to avoid that, and but be smart and safe in the process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Long-winded answer, sorry, more than you.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Everybody wants to know. Okay, just again, quickly, and I don't even know if this is a question for Pat, and this might be too long of a question, but this is from one of our members. Why doesn't the GCS consider private development of schools with master leases to get schools built faster and maybe more economically that don't require huge amounts of bond money?
Yeah, great question. I was going to touch on that, but I wanted to be sensitive to the time, but I'm very glad that question came up because we, again, pre-corona, well, even a couple of years back, we had studied school districts like Greenville, South Carolina, and others. I think in Nashville, Tennessee, they've got what I call a little more sophisticated financing alternatives. Some people call it a P3 model, public-private partnership, the lease-leaseback arrangement, which I think what Rich, you just mentioned. I think given what we know today, that becomes even more important for us to do our due diligence. And we have done a lot of that due diligence, and Commissioner Phillips was down there with me at Greenville just a couple of years ago. And there are some obstacles that we have to understand, and that involves changing some state laws and some other things that are bigger picture opportunities. But no question about it, particularly, in fact, I've said this for years, the whole cycle and model of how we finance and build schools is really antiquated. If you think about it, it's because by the time you get the new construction done, your preventative maintenance and those costs start to eat you up from behind, and then it's a vicious cycle. And we've been sort of doing it that way for a long time. So there's no question that as a school board and our staff, and I think the county commissioners, I would venture to say, would be very encouraged to pursue those. And just before Corona, we had actually had a group come down from Greenville for a follow-up, more of an informational session. And we were looking at that as to really complement the any bond monies that we would have received. Really to again, be good stewards of the dollars and to get more done quickly. And I think that's what your point, the member had asked. So.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think we had a few other questions, but I think in the interest of time, we might need to cap it off there. So again, I appreciate your answers and your time, gentlemen. Ray.
Thank you, Rich. Guys, I want to thank y'all so much for being here. I appreciate y'all. Peter might reach out to you for those other questions if y'all want to answer them and get back to us. But wanted, before you go, to let you know, our adopted school, Hunter Elementary, we donate a book in your honor. And of course, it's Oh, the Places You Go by Dr. Seuss, which for right now may be just the backyard, but the places you go. So for Dr. Seuss in your honor. So again, thank you guys so much. And we appreciate y'all and thank you for the service you both do for us and Guilford County and your constituents. So thank you again.
Thank you all. Thanks, Ray. Rich.
Everybody.
All right, guys, moving forward, we have a special announcement about our dues coming up. So wanted to hand it over to Heather. So make sure y'all know that your dues are due this month at a reduced.
Hey
Heather?
everyone, a 2019 President-elect Heather Dodson. Just want to give you a little update on the dues. The bills have been sent out. You should have gotten them in your account on GRRA.org or gotten an email with those. They are due on the 30th of $570, but we are offering a couple options for payment plans. You can pay the full $570 by June 30th to have your full bill paid. You can choose to do an option 2, which is to pay $175, which is part of your MLS dues, by the 6/30th, not to get your MLS cut off. And then you can pay the additional $395 by August 15th to cover all the dues. Or you can choose option 3, which is to pay that $175 by the 30th as well for your MLS access. Pay $220 by August 15th, and then pay the remainder MLS by 9/30, September 30th, the $175. If you do choose to do a payment plan, please reach out to one of the GRA staff so they can set that up for you. If you don't let them know about the payment plan ahead of time, then you won't get put on that. We did give a discount for our local dues, and then so it covers your local dues for GRA and your MLS dues. So don't forget to sign into your account and take care of that by June 30th. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. All right, going forward, a couple of general announcements. Let's see if Angela or Maxine for RCSC or either one of y'all about get a kid ready for school, which we're already ready to do. Either one of them on, Peter?
Yeah, I did promote Angela. I see her, but she hasn't unmuted herself.
Okay, there we go.
You got video, Angela?
I do, but I don't know why it's not. Here we go.
There
Okay.
we go.
Hey.
Take it away.
Okay, so I know this is a really unusual time, and every year we do get a kid ready for school, and we reach out to Hunter Elementary to see what their needs are. And for the last couple of years, it's been composition books. They've also said that they need dry erase markers. So if they are back in school, they'll need markers. They'll also need composition books, but if they're not and they're working virtually, they still really have a big need for those composition books. And there are certain kind, it's the just the regular like 8.5 by 11 standard notebook size, and they're the marble back, so they don't have that wire spiral. It's the tape back. And our goal was last couple of years we've raised, purchased about 400 to 500 that we've been able to supply the school with. So I know that would be very helpful to them. Since the association is closed, there is a designated space in the foyer to leave the composition books. If people don't want to go out and go shop, you can send a check to GRRA and just put in the memo line Hunter Elementary, and then we will purchase the notebooks for the school. So
Or
we
gift
really
cards. Mention gift cards. You'll take gift
okay,
cards.
gift cards for
Walmart,
Office Depot, Target, Walmart, anywhere like that. We would still be able to go purchase those books. Thanks, Ray. It's a good idea. But I know it's a tough time, but we really do appreciate how generous the members of the association have been, and hope that they'll be able to continue to support this effort for Hunter Elementary. Their needs are probably even greater this year. If you have any questions, just reach out to me or Kim.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela.
Thanks.
And just give with your heart. Get it to us or get it to GRRA, get it to Angela so we can take care of those needs. So RPAC, Marvette, are you with us?
Yes, yes, I am. Hi, everybody. You know, this is a crazy time, and we want to continue to support our Realtor champions, as we did have 2 speaking to us today. So we want to reach out to our membership. We are going to be doing a virtual, our virtual raffle, the reverse raffle. That is something that we've done annually. And we're going to add a virtual participation raffle. So if you cannot support us virtually, financially, we hope you will continue to support us with your vote, with your voice. It is very important that we speak to and support our Realtor champions, the real estate industry, and those we so humbly serve. Thank you, everybody, and stay safe.
Thank you, Marvette. Thank you so much. All right, going forward, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Important updates. Make sure tomorrow, if you have a chance, you can log on with a registration, which we've sent out for the North Carolina Realtors Legislative Forum tomorrow. It is at 9 a.m. They have a great speaker, 2 great speakers, so please be aware of that, and if you can, sign on. Also, June 10th, Lunch and Learn virtual session. Register at ncrealtors.org. Also, June 10th, Lawrence Yoon is going to be speaking at 1:30. He's our NCR economist, and he does a great job. He keeps us all, in the know of what's going to happen with our economy. June 23rd, RCA virtual meeting. It's on the environment and different issues. So look on that for our commercial group from 11:30 to 1. And July 9th, our new realtor orientation from 8:30 to 4. So if you're a new realtor, be there. So before we close, Mike, any other dates you can think of?
I think you got them all, Ray. Thank you.
All right, guys. So look at that, with a minute and a half to spare. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything. And everyone stay safe out there and be good. Take care.